Hello everybody, welcome to this instruction video. In this video I'd like to show you part 6 of Ubuntu. Ubuntu is the Scheepjes Crochet Along 2018, designed by Deidre Uys from Look at What I Made. In part 6 of Ubuntu we're going to grow the triangles that we've made last week. So triangle is up to here, and so we're going to do these last stitches on each of our triangles. So you're going to have 6 identical triangles at the end of part 6. I'm using the large kit, so I have river washed and stone washed XL yarn that I'm using with a 5mm hook, the same hook as last week. If you have one of the other kits, you'll have different yarn and also a different hook size, so use the hook size that you've used up till now. I'll take you through the rounds that make up this part. To thank you for watching. I hope it's a useful video for you. Round 15. I have contrast color 5 on my hook with a slip knot, so just check your kit what exactly is contrast color 5 for you. We have the right side of our work facing, so the right side of the triangle, and we're going to start in the marked stitch, the stitches we marked at the end of last of part 1, end of round 14. This marked stitch, actually the space, we're going to start there with a standing double treble. I'm going to yarn over twice, then hold on to those loops, insert in the space, and complete the standing stitch. In the same space, work 2 trebles. 1 and 2. To remove the stitch marker, I'm going to place it back between the first 2 stitches we worked, so in between those first 2 stitches, so the double treble and the first treble. Now leave it there because we're going to use it again in round 15, so for the moment leave it there. In the next stitch, the first stitch, this one here, work a treble. We're now going to start a small repeat unit. Chain 4. We're going to skip the next stitch, that's stitch 1, and then on stitch 3, 4, oh actually let me say 2, 3 and 4, going to work a cluster stitch, that's a treble 3 together on those 3 stitches. To yarn over, so skip the first stitch, then on the next, through, pick up a loop, take off 2, yarn over, go to the next stitch, pick up a loop, take off 2, again yarn over, go to the next stitch, pick up a loop, take off 2. You have 4 loops on your hook, going to take them all off in one go. This small unit, so starting at the chain 4 up to the cluster stitch here, skipping that 1 stitch, I'm going to do this 11 times in total. I've now done once with you, I'll do 2 or 3 more, and then I'll make it jump in the video. So chain 4, skip the next stitch, that's that one, and go to the stitch after, and work a cluster stitch. And this is of course a treble 3 together, worked over 3 stitches. So that was repeat number 2. At the end we're going to have 11 of these cluster stitches per row, per edge, let me say per edge of the triangle, and if you find at the end you have 12 or 13 of these instead of 11, most likely you'll have forgotten to skip those stitches in between, and it's important that you skip them because we're going to be working in them in the next round. 2, 3, 4 chain stitches again, skip a stitch, it's this one, and then work another cluster. 2, 3, and take them off. I've now worked to repeat 3 times with you. I'm going to make a jump in the video until I've done 10 repeats, and then I'll just show you repeat 11 and the corner. I'm almost to the corner. I've got the corner here marked with a stitch marker. I've done 10 of these repeats. I'll show you repeat 11. That's again chain 4. I'm going to skip the next stitch. That's this one, and then work a last cluster stitch along this edge, and then you should have 11 of these clusters. To get to the corner, we do a chain 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just turn my work a bit. You have 2 stitches left before the corner. You see that stitch and that stitch. I'm going to skip both of them, and in the corner work a treble, chain 1 and a treble. In that corner space, that's a treble, chain 1 and a treble. Let's move the stitch marker to the chain 1 here. Let me just hook it up there. You don't have to do this. I just like to do this to keep track of my corners. I'm going to come down and do the same as we've done on this side. Chain 4. Skipping the first 2 stitches, work a cluster stitch. So that means we're going to skip 1, 2 stitches. So those 2 we're going to skip 1, 2, and then come to the third and start the cluster stitch. 2, 3, and take them off. 1, 2, 3, 4 chain, skip the next stitch, that one, and then work a cluster. That's 1, 2, and 3, and take them all off. See, now you've got 2 of those clusters. We again want 11 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, skipping 1 stitch, work a cluster. 2, 3, and take them off. I'm going to make a jump in the video. So I've done 3 of these. I'm going to jump until I have 10 clusters, and I'll show you the last cluster here as well as this edge. I have 10 of these cluster stitches, so starting here from the corner, I have 10 of them. Chain 4, skip the next stitch, that's this one, and then work cluster number 11. 2 and 3, and take them all off. You have 3 stitches left, 2 full stitches and the chain here. I'm going to do a chain 4, skip the next stitch, that's that one, and then go to this, well, this last full stitch, work a treble on there. See, I've skipped 1 stitch and I work the treble, and here in the space between those 2 stitches, work 2 trebles, just 2 trebles and a double treble. You can cut your yarn at this point, pull through, and you can work away this yarn tail. Do not turn, so leave the right side facing, because for the next round we're going to start back again at this side. Round 16, I have contrast color 1 here. Just check in your kits which color that is for you. You're going to attach your yarn with the slip stitch in the 4th stitch, and you have the right side of your work facing. So here's the stitch mark we placed last round. I'm going to go to the 4th stitch, there's that one there, and attach with a slip stitch. We're going to work 3 trebles in this stitch that we skipped here, being sure to leave the chain space here to the back unworked. So I'm going to work a treble in that stitch and be sure to push the chain to the back. It's 1, 2, and 3. There we go. So 3 trebles. You can see that your chain space here to the back, that's left unworked. We're now going to do a chain 2 to skip this cluster and then work 3 trebles in the next skip stitch. And that we're going to repeat till we're to the corner. So chain 2 to skip this and then 3 trebles. Chain 2 and 3 trebles. So let me show you. Chain 2. Then skipping this cluster here, go to that next available stitch and work 3 trebles in there. 2 and 3. And we repeat it again. Chain 2 and 3 trebles in that next stitch, and push your chain to the back away that you don't accidentally work over that. 2 and 3. So I've now worked 3 of them. Continue with this. I'm going to make a jump in the video and then I'll see you here where we just go around the corner. So again, chain 2, skip the cluster, work 3 trebles in there, chain 2 and 3 trebles, and continue, and I see you here. We are almost to the corner. You see here's the corner stitch that I marked. I'm going to do the repeat once more. Chain 2, going to skip this cluster here. You have 2 stitches left, and that one, the first one, I'm going to work 3 trebles in, and then you've got a second one that's here kind of hidden by the corner. So in that first one there, work 3 trebles. 2 and 3. Now we're going to do a chain 4. 3, 4. We're going to skip this stitch that's kind of hidden there. We're going to skip the corner stitches, and we're going to skip the first stitch on the other side. So this one we're skipping, and then we're going to go to the second stitch, that's that one, and work 3 trebles in there. So that's what we're going to do now. Skip that stitch, then go here and work 3 trebles. So 1, 2 and 3. I'm going to come down and do the same on this side as we did here. That means chain 2, then skip the cluster, and in this next stitch work 3 trebles. And as always, remember to keep your chain loop to the back, that you don't work over it. And again, chain 2, and then come to the next stitch, skipping the cluster, come to the next stitch here and work 3 trebles. 2 and 3. I'm going to make a jump in the video because you're going to repeat this until you get to the point here. So it's chain 2 and work 3 trebles. Chain 2 to skip the treble and cluster here, and then work 3 trebles. Continue until you're here, and then I'll just show you the last bit. We're almost to the end. See, here's the end of the triangle. Going to work the repeat once more. Chain 2, skip this treble, and you have 1 stitch left there. Going to work 3 trebles in there. So 1, 2, and 3. Here you go, 3 trebles. Now to close this round, we're going to close with a slip stitch in this first stitch here. So in that first stitch of the 4, I'm going to close with a slip stitch. See, I still have the yarn from the previous round here. You can cut your yarn, open up, and work away both of these yarn tails. You can also do this at the end of the part, that's also good. Next round we're going to use our main color. Round 17, you're going to use the main color from your kit, and we're going to attach in the space that has the stitch marker here. So between those first 2 stitches, we have the right side facing, by the way, and attach with a slip stitch. At this point you can remove the stitch marker because we don't need it anymore. And to start with a chain 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then in the same space, I'm just wanting to work over the main color yarn, a double treble followed by 2 trebles. So 1 and 2. On the first 2 stitches, going to work a half treble, and that first one is really covered there. See, that's the second one, and that's a stitch you can readily see, but there's actually another one in there. I'm just going to push everything back just to really see that stitch. Is that one there, that stitch. See how it's just peeping out? That one. That's your first stitch. Going to work a half treble, and also on the next stitch work a half treble. There we go. We're now going to work a front post double crochet around this stitch, the next stitch, and that stitch already contains a slip stitch, but around the post going to work a front post double crochet. There you go. We're starting a repeat unit. 3. Going to do a chain 4. We're going to skip these 3 trebles and then go to the next cluster stitch. It's a bit there to the back. If it helps you, push this cluster forward through the chain 2 space, so push it forward. Then around this cluster, going to work a front post double crochet. And what that does is you're going to pinch that cluster. So make sure that your chain 2 space here is to the back. You want to work in front of the chain 2 space, and then complete the front post double. And what you see, what that does is that really brings this stitch forward. And this we're going to do on every cluster. We're going to work this front post double, and there'll be chain 4s in between. So again, a chain 4, skipping the 3 trebles, go to the cluster, and around that stitch, you can see there, work a front post double. You can just kind of scoop that stitch up, and then chain 4, and then go to the next cluster and scoop that stitch. And what happens here is you're pushing all the spaces, these chain 2 spaces, you're pushing them to the back. I'm going to repeat this until we get to the chain corner space. Yeah, I've got that mark there. I'm going to make a jump in the video. So you do a chain 4 and then work a front post double. Chain 4, front post double. Chain 4, front post double. I'll show you once more, then I'll see you here on this second last cluster to work the last bit and go around the corner with you. So I'll show you once more. Chain 4, 3, 4, then go to the next stitch, push that forward if it helps you, that cluster, and around that cluster work a front post double crochet. Continue like this and I'll see you at the corner. I'm almost to the corner. You see here's the marked corner stitch. We've got one more cluster there. I'm going to do a chain 4 to get to that cluster. 3, 4, then go to the cluster and work a front post double around that. Again, chain 4, 2, 3, 4, skipping this last group of 3 trebles. I'm going to push the corner here. I'm just going to push it forward through the chain 4 space. I'm going to leave that to the back because that's going to be easier. Then around the first treble, that treble, work a front post double crochet. Then in the chain space, I'm going to work a double crochet, chain 2, and another double crochet in that same space. That's your new corner, so I'm just going to move the stitch marker to the chain 2 position. That's going to be the new corner. There. I'm going to come down and work a front post double around the next stitch here. That's there, a front post double. Now I'm going to come down and do the same around these clusters as we did coming up. So that's chain 4. On the next cluster here, work that another front post double, pushing the chain 2 space here to the back. Again, chain 4. Skipping the 3 trebles, go to the cluster and work a front post double around that. So again, you can see how you're pushing these clusters forward. Repeat to end, so till you're here. So we're going to do a chain 4, then work a front post double around the cluster, chain 4 to skip these stitches, a front post double. Repeat this until you're here, and then I'll just see you for the last bit. Almost to the end here. You see here's the end of the triangle. I have one more cluster on that one there. It's going to do a chain 4, 3, 4, and then work a front post double around that last cluster. There we go. Chain 4, 3, 4, and now we're going to move to the first of these stitches that are remaining here, and around that first one work a front post double around that. It already contains a slip stitch there at the top, but that doesn't bother. So we're going to work a front post double crochet. Then on the next 2 stitches work a half treble. That's that stitch, 1 next one is 2. In the space between the last 2 stitches, work 2 trebles. I'm going to work a number of stitches in here. It's 1, 2 trebles, a double treble, 2, 3, and a triple treble. 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. Now you can rotate your work, so turn your work, that's actually a better word. You have the back side facing. It's going to work a slip stitch between those last 2 stitches worked. Round 18, I'm going to start with a chain 4. 2, 3, 4, and then 2 trebles in the same space. And you now have the back side of your work facing, so this is the wrong side. On the first 5 stitches, going to work a half treble. That's the first stitch there. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. The next stitch we're going to skip, that's the front post double there, you're going to skip that stitch and move on to the chain 4 space here in the main color. We're going to be working 4 half trebles in every chain 4 space from the main color. We're going to skip the loops from rounds 15 and 16, so only in these chain 4 loops from round 17, and work 4 half trebles in each. And you're going to do that until you get to the point of the triangle, until you get to the corner. You see there are 4 half trebles. So you move to the next space, that's that one, and in there work 4 half trebles. 2, 3, and this here is number 4. Again, the next chain 4 space, go there and work 4 half trebles. So this you're going to repeat in all those chain 4 spaces, and there's quite a few of them, so work 4 half trebles in every space. And I'm going to make a jump in the video, and then you continue working all those chain 4 spaces, and I'll see you here when you've worked 4 half trebles in this last chain 4 space, and I'll just show you the corner and coming back down again. Just worked 4 half trebles in all the chain 4 spaces, and I'm now here at the corner. You have 2 stitches before the chain 2 or the chain 1 corner space. On each of those work a half treble. So that's the first one there. It's 1, and that second one is that one. And now onto the chain corner space. Work a new corner, that's a half treble, chain 1, and a half treble. I'm going to move the stitch marker to the new corner position. There you go. On the next 2 stitches, work again a half treble, and this first one is easy, it's that stitch there. But that second stitch can be a little hard to get into. That stitch there is just before the chain space, it's also hard to see maybe. So that there is the next stitch, you still need to work in that. So that's 2 half trebles. You're on to the next chain space, and you're going to work 4 half trebles in this chain 4 space and in every chain 4 space all the way down till you get to the end of this edge. So that's 4 half trebles. Move on to the next chain space, and in there also work 4 half trebles. I'm going to make another jump in the video, and then I'll see you when we're at the bottom of the triangle. You see now I've done 2 times 4 half trebles. Continue this, work on all these loops here to the back, and I'll see you here when you've done 4 half trebles in that last chain space there, that one. I've just worked those last 4 half trebles in the last chain 4 space. I've worked 4 half trebles in every chain 4 space. For the end of this round, I'm going to skip the next stitch at that one. I'm going to skip that stitch, then go to the next and work a half treble, and that's the first of 5. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then number 5 here falls on the last full stitch before the chain. In the chain space, I'm going to do the same as on this side. See the 2 trebles and the double treble, so we do the same here. So that's 2 trebles in that space. 1, 2 trebles and a double treble, and 3. Turn your work and make a slip stitch between those last 2 stitches. Round 19, I'm going to start with a chain 5, 5, and then in this space we're going to work quite a number of stitches. A double treble, followed by 2 trebles, and a half treble. On the next 58 stitches, so on this entire edge, going to work a half treble in every stitch. Just going to move my stitches to the side because there's the first stitch, and that's the first of 58, and that's going to bring you to the chain 1 corner space at the top of your triangle. So work a half treble on every stitch. Almost to the corner. One more, that last stitch there that I need to work. I have 58 half trebles. If you're in doubt, just count your stitches, then you know for sure if you've got them all. In the chain corner space, going to work a new corner. That is a half treble, chain 1, and a half treble. Half treble, chain 1, and a half treble. Just going to move the stitch marker to the new position. Oh dear, I just broke my stitch marker. It's a pity, but I'll just hook this up here. And I know where that position is. There you go. I can glue this back together, don't worry. I just glue this back to the stitch marker and then everything's fine. What we're going to do now is come back down and work again a half treble on every stitch. So in the first one, that stitch, work the first half treble, and that's the first of 58. So that's 1, this is 2, and that will bring you almost to the end of this this edge. To work a half treble on every stitch. And the last half treble is here on that last stitch before the chain stitch. Then in the space between the last 2 stitches, work a half treble, 2 trebles. This is the same as on the other side, 2 trebles, a double treble, and a triple treble. can now cut your yarn because you're finished. Open up and work away this yarn tail plus any other yarn tails that you might have. And when you've done that last round, this is what your work looks like. You've got the beautiful flower in this triangle, and you've got this nice edge that we made today, and we finished with that edge of half trebles. You need to make not one, of course, but 6 of these triangles, so everything we've done today, so this edge and the half and the main colors stitches, do this on your other 5 triangles also. When you've finished all 6 triangles, you're ready for next week when we will start to join them up.